horses, the dry as a bone, the Akubra hats, the stock whips, all those things became internationally known through the success of the movie. So the movie became more successful than anyone ever imagined when we were making it, I think. I mean, #1 box office in Australia, the most successful film ever released in the country. And I think it made Australians very proud of their heritage. Very proud of the fact that we could make a movie that had state-of-the-art technique, because it had a Dolby Stereo soundtrack. It was shot on Panavision, and even to this day, it still stands up. But in terms of technical quality, so and when Bruce Rowland brings in Waltzing Matilda into the score when Jim arrives back at the homestead at the end of the movie, Australians felt very proud. But okay, then the movie was released by 20th Century Fox in America and in other countries, and it had gained a whole new audience of people who were unfamiliar, I suppose, with the American Western, and loved it. And it's become a classic of horse movies, horse action. It's become a classic in its own right in other places as well.
I can see that. I can see how that happened for overseas viewers. And I think what it did for Australian viewers is it gave them a sense of identity and acknowledgement of Australian culture, and particularly those people, multi-generational families from the high country. What it has given to them, it's incredible, because those people are so proud of the Man from Snowy River
Oh
film.
yes. Marilyn, when I was a city boy born and bred, when I was cast in the movie, I told them, some of you have probably heard this before, but when I screen tested, I told George Miller, the director, that I'd sat on a horse maybe 2 or 3 times in my life. And they said, don't worry about that. And then it became clear that when they cast me, that if I was going to play Jim Craig, this icon of Australian literature and of Australian bush life, I was the horse riding, at the very least, was something that I was going to have to come to terms with. Now, of course, I formed a relationship with Charlie Lovick that remains to this day. We're lifelong friends. Charlie Lovick owned the buckskin horse that had been cast before anybody else as the man's horse, Denny, the beautiful buckskin Denny.
Yep.
And Charlie became my mentor. And he not only taught me how to ride and crack a stock whip, and also talked to me, and showed me his country. We went on an 8-day ride into the Wanangata Valley and back again, and shared that experience with me. And I couldn't have done what I did in the movie had it not been for Charlie Lovick's help and mentorship. And it turned out, Marilyn, that I had, which no one knew when they cast me, that I had a natural ability on horseback, and I was very committed to it. I gave it 100% energy and commitment, and I was in the saddle every day, trying to get better. And while we were doing the shooting, Charlie would often be there, and I'd look at Charlie after we did a take, and all right, and he'd just give it a little nod, or he might say, I'd have another go at that one. I think so. Anyway, yeah, Charlie.
I can actually hear Charlie saying that, and he's I'd give another go at that.
And it turned out that I did much more of the riding than originally anticipated. Didn't do it all. There was an expert champion rodeo rider named Gerald Egan, who doubled for me in several scenes in the movie very, very well, and also helped me to prepare for the movie. So yeah, I'll rave on and on and on if you don't stop me, Marilyn.
Oh, I love it. No, that's fantastic. I'm a bit like that myself, but I love it when you rave on. So you've actually answered the next question.
Oh,
no, but that's fantastic. I was going
Okay.
to say, why did you feel the film had such great success? And we can see why,
Well,
because it captured
okay.
Australia. Yeah.
Yes, and there are lots of elements. There's the landscape, as we mentioned. There's the romance. There's the action, which was brilliantly photographed, brilliantly done. there's the music, of course, which is very much loved. And you know, there are some pretty decent acting performances in it as well.
It's
You
a
know, Kirk
beautiful film.
Douglas in
Yep.
two roles, Jack Thompson, Lorraine Bailey. You know, there are, you know, and a great supporting cast. So there's lots about The Man from Snowy River that that appeal to people, and you know, it's very clear that right up to this day, how much loved the movie remains.
It's true. Um, so one of the things that another one thing, Sigrid Thornton recently mentioned during an interview, and this is about writing, that today you would never get away with some of the things that you were required to do during filming. Can you share with us what that was about? What did you get up to?
Well, okay, the crack riders were the real thing. They were the local men. You see it in the credits. You see Lovick, 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 Purcell, 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 right? The families of the people who originally, you know, lived in that part of the world, and so they were the real thing. And they brought their horses. These weren't trained stuntmen. They were local farmers and mountain men, you know, and so uh, we did things out there, and you know, Jeff Burrows, the producer, was also, he'd done a lot of riding himself, and so we did things out there. If I said during the Man from Snowy River in concert, if things looked fair income in the Man from Snowy River, it's because a lot of them were, and we were galloping through the bush, and it was fast and furious, and it was relatively dangerous. There was one shot. Okay, George Miller wanted a shot of the horse's head in the foreground and my head behind, galloping along. So we it was shot out of the boot of George's car with the camera in the boot angling up, and I had to bring Denny at the gallop right up
Okay.
to the back of the Mercedes Benz that was George's car, and so he could get his shot of Denny's head galloping and my head behind, you know, holding the reins. So now, if that car had hiccuped, or you know, we would have been all over the back of that car. It would have been
You sure
disastrous.
would have.
Right?
Yep.
Disastrous. That's just one example, but we did things on Snowy. We were out there in the middle of the bush. There was no occupational health and safety in those
No.
days. We did, you know, we were cowboys, and we did what cowboys do.
So it sounds like you actually had a lot of fun too.
Well, I mean, look, it was exhilarating. There's no doubt about that. There were a few times when I personally thought, okay, here comes the tree. The dream is over. Good night. But Denny would be able to just, you know, just do a little dodge. He was such a beautiful, sure-footed mountain
Ah,
horse, wonderful with cattle, and I came to love him. We formed a
oh,
tremendous bond,
so
and
what? That was what I was going to ask. What was he like to ride?
oh, well, he was a goer, right? Job's
Yeah.
on. If you got on his back, he said, right, what are we doing? What are we doing? And he wouldn't walk, would not walk. He was a jogger, right? I always say, walk, Denny, and he never would. He was jig jog, jig jog, jig jog. Always wanted to be in the front. And you know, he was a real operating horse. And I had to work my skills up to be able to manage him. I started on quieter horses at the beginning, and then gradually got to a horse called Cheeky that had been Charlie's horse
Cheeky.
before Denny. And Cheeky was quite similar to Denny, but a little bit
Cheeky.
older. And so,
Okay.
yeah, so anyway, so I worked my way up to being able to handle Denny. Yeah. So, look, yeah, I mean, uh, there were there there were times that, oh well, okay, let me put it this way. You would just never be, you couldn't make The Man from Snowy River in the way it was made back then today.
So maybe that energy, maybe that is part of what comes through the film.
Oh,
All
I
of
think
that
it is. We
energy
we
and that the realness of it.
well, we the thinking was, if you can convince the people who know about it the mountain cattlemen themselves. If you can convince them, then everybody will buy it,
Yeah.
right? And when we went to the screening, the first screening, the premiere screening in Mansfield, they had the world premiere in the little town of Mansfield, where around which we'd shot the movie, and it was filled with the mountain cattlemen, and they gave it the heartiest approval, I have to tell you. And I thought, no, okay, this is going to
Of
work,
course.
you know.
I think it still happens today, Tom. And I believe there's a little like a little museum in Merrijig. Does that still exist?
I don't know.
Oh, I heard that.
Oh, right.
So, well, that was very
Oh,
exciting. I
look, there's
just
the local pub in Merry, the Hunt
yes.
Club, which is, I walk in there and it's like I'm looking at myself everywhere I look, right? On the walls around the pub are pictures of me and of the movie. Yeah.
But you're their local hero. But I
Oh,
think it's the sort of film that it is. You become a hero for so many people. You know?
well, Jim's the hero, you know. Jim
Yeah.
triumphs through his own abilities.
Yeah.
And I think that's, that's something that goes back, to Greek literature, the emergence of the hero being challenged by the mountain cattleman. You go down to the low country, Emma, live up here. All of that being challenged by the gods, so to speak. And then for the rest of the movie, he's searching for something that will allow him to live in the high country with the respect of those people who live up there and live that life. And the ride, the chase after the Brumbies and bringing them back provides that for Jim. So yeah, the emergence of the hero. It's all about projected image. I'm not a hero. Jim is a hero.
Yes. Okay. So on 40-year anniversary of the Man from Snowy River film was celebrated by you and Sigrid in 23, really, although it was 21 or 22. And you took to the road with the Man from Snowy River concerts.
Yeah.
Where did you play? I think you played
Well,
pretty much all over.
This new technique where they're able now to take the music from the track of the movie, leaving the sound effects track, all the horses hitting the water as they gallop through the river, all those things, the stock whip cracks, all the different things, the birds in the trees, all of that. They can leave all of that. They can leave all the dialogue, but take the music off. So this new way of presenting the movie was going to be, or it has been, the movie screened on the big screen, which is kind of unusual to be able to see that again, see the movie in all its glory in Panavision, see the movie and have the music played live by a symphony orchestra.
Oh, how wonderful.
Sync with the picture.
Yes.
It's quite an amazing process, and it's very powerful because, of course, Bruce Rowland's wonderful music, award-winning music, is still so much loved. And when you see it, when you hear it played live and see it in sync with the movie, it's a very powerful experience. They also Sigrid Thornton and I to just start off the proceedings by sharing some memories that we had of the making of the film. So we've been there at all of these events. It started in Melbourne in August last year, and they sold out the Hamer Hall 4 times. And as a result of that, we went to Sydney, where there were 6 shows. We went to Brisbane, Perth, Adelaide, and we're going to Hobart later in the year. So it's been
fantastic,
incredible after all these years. How, I mean, I think it's a great attraction to be able to see the movie on the big screen and hear the music played live, perhaps to hear some of the stories from Sigrid and I. But boy, after all these years, for it to still get this wonderful positive reaction has been amazing.
And I think it's still to come back to Melbourne. I miss the Melbourne.
Yes, it is. It is. It's coming back it's going back in August. That's
well,
right.
I'll be there in August. Sure. I miss the other one. It must be very emotional for you and Sigrid as the stars.
While I was watching it,
first ones.
While I was watching it, at times you'd sort of forget that the music was being played live, and then something would bring you right back in. They've got a wonderful female pianist who plays Jessica's theme, and she travels around with us, and she plays it so beautifully. And so,
nice.
of course, I mean, music can bring back so many memories. And yeah, I mean, um, it's still the music is very moving, and
Yep.
I mean, well, I mean, the movie changed my life, Marilyn, and I can't sort of, I'm still just very closely involved in it, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I can understand that.
Yeah.
Jessica's that is just so beautiful. I use that a lot when I make these little videos for the Brumby group. I use that always.
Mm,
It's so beautiful.
indeed.
Your own performances. I've seen your shows, and I never ever knew. I've seen your shows advertised. I've never been to see you perform. I have to be
Oh,
honest.
yeah.
I didn't know you with a singing voice for the Frank Sinatra, the mini series.
Yeah, this is my other hat, Marilyn. My
Absolutely,
my,
but
my other
that's
hat, not the Akubra. Um, okay, yeah. Well, I've loved the music of Frank Sinatra all my life.
yep.
This is a long story, but I wrote a song about Sinatra as the first song I ever wrote, which
Wow.
about his music and the effect that he had on my life. I performed it live on the midday show, which was then hosted by Ray Martin. This was in the early 90s.
Yeah.
And then we heard about this proposed production of this miniseries Sinatra that was going to be made, produced by Frank's youngest daughter, Tina Sinatra, and made at Warner Brothers in Los Angeles. I wanted to be considered to play the role. I knew that was a bit of a long shot, not being an American and not being an Italian American, but I was sent the audition scenes and which I recorded and then added my performance of the song called "The Man in the Hat" that I'd written. I added that to the end of the tape. Well, it turned out that Tina needed someone to sing the voice of her father as a young man in the days before he had a recording contract, and then to recreate some of the early hits. And so she asked me to fly to Los Angeles and sing for her, which I did. And then she offered me this amazing job, which I wasn't even a professional singer at the time, Marilyn, but nevertheless, there I found myself pinching myself, singing the voice of Frank Sinatra, one of the great voices of
Wow.
20th century entertainment. And that eventually led to me creating my own show about Sinatra and a whole sort of diversification in my career from acting into singing and performing that continues to this day. So, yeah,
And
it's a
it's
long story,
ongoing.
but
So
yeah,
it's ongoing still. I've seen your shows advertised, and they come through the Brumby group now
right.
and then.
Yeah.
So as will the Man from Snowy River in concert. I'll post those whenever I see them coming through.
Yeah, well,
So,
as I say, it's in Melbourne again in August, a couple of shows, and then Hobart in October.
well, that's something
And
to
and
look
who knows
forward
whether
to.
there'll be return performances in other places as well. I'm not sure
Well, that's
yet.
something I'm wondering about, a comeback tour. I wouldn't be surprised, Tom. I really
Well,
wouldn't be surprised. If
it's been
Sigrid's happy with that too, oh,
Look, it
fun.
was lovely. This was the thing, is that Sigrid and I were asked to share some memories, as I said. And we had a phone conversation about it. And we said, how are we going to fill up 20 minutes? We've been given 20 minutes. Anyway, we started talking, and then we realized that we could have talked for 50 minutes about our memories of the thing. So it was a matter then of cutting it down to, okay, what's really important here? And it was just lovely to reestablish contact
Oh,
with Sigrid again after all I mean, we've remained friends over the years, but we don't see each other very often. And well, people have said at least that the chemistry between us that was established from the very first screen test the only screen test that I did, and Sigrid was reading opposite all the young actors who were auditioning for the role of Jim. That chemistry that was established right then is still present.
it must flow. Like, you must start talking,
Well, I just
and
think it's
then
natural.
it's like old friends, and you say,
Yeah,
oh,
it is.
remember that time, and
Well, that's
remember
right.
that time.
It
Yeah.
is, and we got on well, and I think that I think look, everybody in the room when I auditioned recognized that there was a connection between us, and it
Yeah.
translated onto the screen, and it's true in reality.
Okay, well, moving on now, we talk about Brumbies, our Brumbies, and
Okay.
what's happening. I think the last time you did an interview, I think, was with Ray Hadley, 2GB, there was talk of the introduction of aerial shooting. And I know how opposed to it you were then. And I remember in Melbourne, you were really worried about what was happening. So aerial shooting is taking place now. It has taken place since October. There've been over 5,000 Brumbies aerially shot, some of which have been definitely very cruel. So I don't know. I recently heard also, I've broken the arm on my glasses, but that's all right. So I keep on doing this. We became aware that the Cascade Brumbies, descendants of the Brumbies that inspired Ellen Mitchell to write the Silver Brumby books, were actually shot last year in 2023, which I think is simply cultural vandalism. And for the life of me, I actually don't understand why those people who have made these decisions just don't seem to get it.
I think the whole situation is heartbreaking. I think it is staggering that in a modern democracy, when there's so much opposition to this dreadful practice that's going on, how they can ignore the facts, ignore the science, ignore the real numbers that are there, and just continue just continue with this. It seems to me, I don't know, it seems to me they've got some kind of agenda that they're just not going to listen. They're determined they're going to get rid of those Brumbies.
Yeah.
And even with somebody of the power of Ray Hadley, and Ray Hadley has a lot of power.
Oh.
And I rang him because I thought, well, okay, I'm gonna say something, and I had my rave about it. But even someone with the power of Ray Hadley hasn't been able to stop it. And there's so much, I mean, there's so much I could say about this. There is no way that aerial shooting can possibly be a humane way of treating this issue. There's just is not possible for it to be. I remember, Marilyn, when we did the movie, there were some helicopter shots, right? And you know, of all of us galloping along. And when those helicopters came overhead, and the only shooting going on was through a camera, not through rifles or guns, right? Those horses were up on their hind legs, rearing up, like trying to, right? And then we'd have to wait for action through the loudspeakers, right? And we'd let them go, and those horses literally were flying to get away from those. So I remember this quite clearly. So there's no way that horses are not stressed by the fact that there are helicopters above them, quite apart from the guns, right? So there's just no way this is a humane way of dealing with this situation.
Well, it's not,
and it's been pointed out. It's been shown, and they're still doing it. And I found it very disheartening, that because I thought, oh, well, Ray will put a stop to this. Ray will be able to, put a stop. And they're just going ahead. They're just doing it.
They are ignoring even. Ray has been incredible, and he's been extremely outspoken. He gave evidence at the New South Wales Senate inquiry, upper house inquiry into aerial shooting, which, despite that taking place, the state government, New South Wales, started aerial shooting.
Right.
They created their own standard operating procedures and just went ahead with it.
And so the state government, the National Parks and Wildlife Service, and the RSPCA are all involved in this.
Yeah.
And that's just tragic. I just think it's diabolical what has gone on. Diabolical.
It's kind of a bit incomprehensible, isn't it, when you think about it, that RSPCA would have approved after they did that test. They examined, I think it was 40 of the Brumbies that were shot, but they actually approved it. It had to go through a test for aerial shooting. Some of the Brumbies had taken up to 15 bullets. because they don't die instantly.
Right. And
So
what happened in
anyway,
Guy Fawkes years ago? What happened up there in Guy Fawkes Forest? I mean, we know
yeah,
it's
we
not
do know.
humane. We know it's cruel. We know they're going to die awful, painful deaths. And
Well,
look, why? There are alternatives. Of course, the Brumbie numbers in the high country have to be controlled, but there are different and better and humane ways of doing it. And I just
absolutely.
don't understand why this course of action continues. And except that, I think they just I don't know. The agenda is we're going to get rid of them. And I've spent time up in that high country, Maryland. And, not a lot of time, but I was exposed to it and I did see it. And it's vast, rugged country. It's not a pretty English garden, the vast country, wild country that can support a number of different activities. And, it's just, I think it's so sort of narrow-minded, and also horses are like an easy target. Let's talk about the deer. Let's talk about the wild pigs or the dogs or all the things that were introduced here. And the
Mm.
horses are an easy target because they're inclined to trust us, you know? And
And I think you'll disbelieve when we think about the actual inquiry taking place, some of the evidence that was given, and the New South Wales government actually heard that evidence. There was a Dr. Andrea Harvey, an expert vet. Okay, now she gave evidence. She went through the procedure for what they are doing and described how frightened a Brumby would be.
oh,
And she ended with, there is no way it's inhumane. Now, the New South
totally.
Wales government have heard that. And yet Sharp has ignored that. She is ignoring what is evidence. She's ignored evidence about numbers, a population count using an alternative method in part of the park. She's ignoring that and
Yep.
is plundering on because she has a political agenda to actually be rid of Brumby. And I see we've got Mr. Michael McCormack joining us, who's got his video on, but I'm pleased he has. Hello, Michael. Michael, do you know Michael McCormack? He's a
I know who
member
he
of
is.
Parliament.
I don't know him, but I know who he is.
Well, you've met him now. He's on the
Hello.
screen.
Hello.
So, hello,
Hello,
Michael.
Tom. How are you? Hello.
Yeah,
Very privileged to meet you. I love your movies, and I think you're a great Australian. So thank you for doing what you're doing in this regard.
Thank you. Look,
okay.
I haven't done much except, look, it's a bit tricky for actors to stand up in political situations because you might have a lot of supporters, you might have a lot of people who are against what you say. But I think on this particular issue that it's undeniable that what is happening is not humane. It is actually cruel. It is staggeringly, it is just plain wrong as far as I'm concerned. So I thought, well, all right, I'll use my public notoriety and say something. But it hasn't had any effect. Hasn't had any effect.
Well, maybe it needs a global approach. I can tell you now that we've got Barbara Moore, who is one of the movers and shakers with the Equine Collaborative International. I mentioned about her before, and they would be very keen to perhaps broaden the reach of a webinar into USA, Canada, the other countries where they are actually involved. And it does need to be the cruelty that's happening in Australia to our Brumbies is unforgivable.
Especially Marilyn, as we all know, and I'm sure everybody who's watching us now and everybody who will watch this recording who works with horses knows what sensitive creatures they are, knows how the kind of relationships that can be formed between humans and horses are beautiful. They're beautiful.
Yeah.
And in all different kinds of areas, they're beautiful. Not just riding them, but in every way. Anybody who works with horses knows that, and to think, to contemplate this kind of terrible, cruel death that is happening, could be allowed to happen. Look, what's the deal about 8,000 people approved of aerial shooting out of 11,000? I don't buy that.
No, neither do we. What that was about, and I've even got issue with the manner in which it was conducted. There is a way in which, if you want to vary a management plan, it's almost like having a new management plan. It's got to be advertised and then posted. It's got to be put on their website and people able to make submissions. But what Invasive Species Council did is they got bits of paper which they then took around the traps, markets and so on, presented it to people like a petition and got people to sign. And then somehow what they did is they filtered through the system those signatures. People didn't even know what they were signing. And it would have been flavoured by what they say, oh, Brumbies are damaging in the rat and all this. So that is how those numbers appeared through a system when the actual website required personal submissions. Anyway, so that's how the numbers came up.
I think there has been a lot of misinformation that has been put out there by the authorities, and also a reluctance to accept data with a different point of view, from a different point of view, a complete reluctance, an avoidance of it. And that's not fair.
Well, it's not fair, but I think what we need, they've got a focus, haven't they? There's an agenda and a focus, and it's politically driven. And the goal is to remove the Brumbies, regardless of what they might mean to European Australians. And that's huge. From what we've all been speaking about before now, what it means to Australians, it's part of our cultural identity. I was horrified to learn that the Cascades Brumbies had been slaughtered. Alan Mitchell's, and it's not those Brumbies, but it's the, descendants of the Brumbies that inspired Alan Mitchell. They've just gunned them down.
Yeah.
It's lacking an understanding of some sort.
I mean, I know that probably most of the people who are watching, or if not all of the people who are watching, are on side. It's still heartbreaking that despite all this opposition, it's still going on.
Well, yeah, it is. And fortunately, a group, an organisation, Snowy Mountain Bush User Group, have issued legal proceedings in the Supreme Court of New South Wales. And the basis of their court application is the cruelty. That's the main focus, is the cruelty. So that goes to trial actually on the 2nd and 3rd of July. So I'm really hoping, we're all hoping, I think who we have with us tonight is predominantly Brumby advocates, so many of whom would know exactly what you're talking about when you mention the special relationship with a horse or a Brumby. It's almost spiritual. It's unbelievable. And I'm sure you spent time sharing breath with Denny.
Denny,
we all do that.
It became the sort of bond, Marilyn, between him and me, that it was, it wasn't him doing something and me doing something. We were actually working as one. We were as one as we did those actions, and that sort of bond is extremely powerful. And I'm sure everybody knows what I'm talking about.
Definitely.
And he was such a sensitive. I mean, you put a kid on his back and he'd behave, right? But if you put a rider on his back, say, right, let's go. They know. And
that will come. That came through the film, Tom. That's part of the success of the film, is the actual bond that you formed with Denny after a while.
And that was real. That that was real. And it was captured. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, the Bush Users Group go to trial on the 2nd and 3rd of July. there is a fundraiser happening because they need a hand with legal fees. So that's been going around all the various groups. And if anybody listening tonight would like to donate, many people I'm sure have already, but if you go to the Snowy Mountain Bush Users Group Facebook page, there you can either donate via GoFundMe or direct deposit into an account. They'll be very grateful because this is a biggie, and I think they've actually got a chance on the ground of cruelty. It's complex, legally complex, of course, but on the ground of cruelty, when the minister knows and regardless proceeds on numbers, she's not listening to advice, and she knows on numbers. And when you look at the animal welfare and Pest Smart and the whole shebang, it's going to be one hell of a court trial, and I'm hoping to be able to watch it.
I hope so.
So we'll see about that. So I think I mentioned to you that the Equine Collaborative International would really love to host you for a webinar, and I know that Barbara Moore is listening, so we'll see about that.
Okay.
We'll maybe talk with them.
Of course, if I can, however I can help in
I know.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it just as I say, if somebody like Ray Hadley, who is an expert communicator, and has the avenue, right? He's got the platform.
Yeah.
If he, I think he's probably changed some minds, thank goodness, but there's still, it's still happening. There's no, he hasn't been able to stop it. None of us have been able to stop it. And I just find that, I just find it almost unbelievable in a modern democracy. Michael, do you think
they have the power? That's the problem. That's the way, when you've got politics, it's the one who holds the power. You've got to pull that power away from them.
So what? So we have to wait till we can vote them out? Anyway,
well, maybe.
As a politician, what do you think?
Oh, look, you bash your head against a brick wall sometimes, Tom. You really do. And I mean, I've raised it in the federal parliament. It really is the remit of the state government. But I've had a good discussion with Tanya Hargraves today about what we can do going forward. I think a webinar is a good thing because people power does move mountains. I'll give you one quick example. Kate Cheney was against the live sheep export trade, and she got carpet bombed her electorate office with tens of thousands of emails, and she changed her view overnight because she thought, I might get, as you've just said, voted out. And so politicians who think that they might get voted out, they get very nervous, and let me tell you, they can have the propensity to change their mind. I think using Wes Fang on that floor of the Legislative Council in New South Wales, he's a National Party MLC, lives in Wagga Wagga, same city I do, Tom, to ask questions of Penny Sharp, who's also in the Legislative Council, is a good thing to do. Happy to help in any way, shape or form, but look, and Tanya mentioned what we could do federally.
Well, the federal elections are a while off, and we've really got to deal with that now. Yeah, we've got to deal with it now because Brumbies are being shot at the moment, and I do perceive that with the federal elections coming up, the Labor government really won't like labels such as barbaric cruelty and cruelty against them, but it's pretty So we'll see. One thing you would have enjoyed, Tom, is watching Ray during the Upper House Senate inquiry. He gave evidence. He was amazing. He was on fire. Yeah. He actually, commanded the room. He got away with so much because obviously he had parliamentary privilege.
It was the Legislative Council inquiry. I have to say, Marilyn, it wasn't a Senate inquiry. Senator's federal. It was a Upper House inquiry.
Did I say Senator? I thought I said Upper House. I'm aware it was Upper House. I must have, upper
Well,
house
I mean,
inquiry.
I think he's been a champion for the cause, and I think
He is.
I think everybody feels
Yeah.
very thankful to him for
Absolutely. He's been
making his position so
it's
clear.
not over yet. He's still talking
no.
and
Mm.
speaking out. So let's watch this litigation that is happening very, very soon, like 2nd and 3rd of July. That's my hope at the moment in the immediate, because we've got Brumbies. They won't be getting national parks have pledged, given an undertaking not to remove any more Brumbies from retention zones, but that doesn't mean to say they won't be shooting them in other areas. And that's part of the problem, the aerial and ground shooting. Doesn't matter where they are. And for rehoming to actually start. Personally, I think the whole aerial shooting, ground shooting and rehoming should have all stopped immediately the upper house started their inquiry into aerial shooting.
Right.
That
What they did was close the park off, so they don't have any, so nobody's seeing what they're doing.
exactly.
And they're going on with this dreadful.
And part of the problem, to prove cruelty, one must find a carcass that you can actually call in RSPCA, which they can't. They actually can't do a report on it anyway because they have a conflict of interest. So,
well,
yeah, it's a bit of a complex issue.
Yeah, well, of course it is. Of course it is. But aerial shooting, in my opinion, is plain wrong.
We all agree with you, Tom. I think we might, we're nearing the end of our time. We're running out of time.
Okay.
Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about? We know we've got your show, The Man from Snowy River in concert, coming back to Melbourne. Yay.
Yeah.
And it's in Hobart. What else? Tell us.
Oh, look, you know, I do my singing gigs from time to time around the place. You can find out about that. But you know, I mean, look, I'm always, you know, happy to talk about Snowy. I'm always happy to talk about Farlath. I'm very proud that the two movies that you know, the first two movies that I did were so well made, and I had the opportunity to play these characters who've become, you know, much loved, and so, you know, but yeah, I mean, let's just hope that this issue with the Brumbies can be well. I think the aerial shooting needs to be stopped, and there are better ways of managing this situation. Much better ways that we can surely find.
I think the first thing that must happen is a count of Brumbies using an alternative methodology other than the disputed method, which is the distance modelling. And there must be 3,000 Brumbies retained in retention zones. The minister must make a declaration about how many can be in each retention zone, because there are different numbers in each retention zone. There might only be 30 in one retention zone, or, I mean, in the northern zone, there'll be a lot more. So the minister must make a declaration about how many can. There must be 3,000 across the 4 retention zones. I think outside the retention zones, given the terrible removals, the shootings that have been happening, whether it's 5,000 or 6,000, numbers are probably adequate. Once down enough, once we get a proper count done, to maybe rehome some of those Brumbies that beyond, but it'll be outside it'll be in the removal zones. I don't think there'll be many being removed from retention zones because the numbers are low. They've shot so many already in retention zones, out of control, including the Cascade mobs. Absolutely appalling. Anyway, well, Sarah, are you there? I don't know how we've done this, but I can't close the meeting off. I seem to have lost. Are you there, Sarah?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi.
Okay. So I just want, Tom, thank you so much for joining us and participating. It's been wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
And you know, perhaps if we're going to do something similar again, I don't know, there may be questions that individual people might like to ask me, the things that we haven't spoken about, and quite happy to talk about, of course, but
that would be wonderful. Would you do
yeah,
that?
yeah.
A comeback if we get some questions up?
Well,
that would be wonderful if we can arrange that with you.
Different things, but you know, we Sigrid and I try to cover when we're doing the, you know, I mean, as I say, we've only got 20 minutes, and we try to cover a lot of those memories when we do the Man from Snowy River in concert shows. But I just know, look, I mean, I know that the movies are still so popular and mean so much, and they're across generations. You know, kids who weren't even thought of when we made that movie are now being put in front of it and loving it. And you know, so that's very important. And I'm proud of that that legacy, and I'm proud to. Well, I'm certainly, you know, I'm proud to stand up for what the movie presents, definitely.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much again. And we look forward to a second take. And maybe, just maybe, Sigrid might join us next time. Have a chat to her. That would be wonderful. I'd love to hear from Sigrid. I mean, as you as well. All righty. Thank you so much, Tom.
Thanks,
and we'll talk
Tom.
soon.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael, for joining us as well.
Thank you all. Nice to meet you, Michael. Thank you. Thank you very much, Marilyn.
Thank you, Michael, for your time. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thanks,
All the best. Talk soon.
And now.
Bye.
Bye.
I can see a few of you. Bye.